Welcome to Cohn and Krueger, the only one of my weekly YouTube shows that starts early every week. Here we are. The name of the show is Trades the Niners could pull off on draft day. We're going to start there, but first there's some news from yesterday. The 49ers hosted a pair of big-name wide receivers, Malik Turner and Marcus Johnson. But they didn't sign them because, they might be a little too expensive. What do you think of this move? I'm sorry, I'm so snarky right off the bat. What do you think of this move, seriously?
I don't. I don't think much of those guys. One guy went to Texas. One guy is a special teamer. I think they're just looking for camp bodies at this point. Neither of those guys is the kind of guy that's going to move the needle for most Niner fans. And I don't even think you've got a receiver that can play from scrimmage there. You're just looking at special teamers and guys who are going to round out the roster.
Yeah, I think it kind of rubs salt in the wounds of Niner fans. Like they're hoping that maybe the Niners have one more move in them, and it's clear that they don't. They need wide receivers. They're looking at special teams. They're just focused on special teams only this offseason, which is kind of rough. Malik, I didn't know who Marcus Johnson was. I had heard of Malik Turner.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I know a lot of these guys, but I had to go watch both of them to kind of refresh my memory on who they were. As I said, neither guy moves the needle. It's interesting, Grant. I think the Niners do need a receiver, but they don't just need a receiver. They need a very specific receiver. They need a vertical threat who opens up the field for Debo, Juwan Jennings, Ayuk, Kittle. That's the receiver they need.
Also, I've heard this argument. I agree with that, by the way. I heard this argument that the Niners keeping Jimmy Garoppolo on the roster didn't prevent the 49ers from getting anyone they wanted. That somehow this was the offseason they wanted. It was just Charvarius Ward and special teams. I don't buy that at all. I think we're seeing clearly the Niners said their first choice wasn't to keep Jimmy, and we're seeing the consequences of deciding that holding out for the hope of maybe trading him one day is better than $17.5 million in cap space right now. This is the consequence.
I get the feeling that Levi Stadium could literally implode, and there would be like a third of the Niner media force would be like, you know what? That's part of the plan. We would like, the stadium to implode because there's hidden advantages. I mean,
we can't write off the 49ers just because Levi's imploded.
Seriously. Isn't it how convenient that in the year they can't trade their quarterback for months, they also have no free agents that they want that money earmarked for. It's just amazing how that works.
Amazing. Well, good luck with these two guys, 49ers, if they sign them.
Exactly. Let's get into Debo. There's a lot of talk about Debo and potentially trading Debo Samuel. Kind of where do you weigh in on the Debo talks? Do you think that it's something that it will happen? I mean, I think it's pretty clear that if you the price tag is about you talked about it, it's about $70 million guaranteed. So unless you're willing to go down that path, maybe a trade is viable.
I mean, I don't think they should. I didn't think they should trade DeForest Buckner, but that doesn't mean they won't. I mean, I'm not sure that the 49ers are as all in and sold on Debo as they are with Nick Bosa, for example. Nick Bosa has been an elite for 2 years. He was the guy they drafted number 2 overall. With Debo, I think they were so disappointed with him in 2020. He really never came into the season in shape. He was hurt the whole year and missed like 9 games. I think they felt coming into last year like, man, if we could just get a healthy season out of him, we wouldn't be opposed to trading him because we're not certain that he's going to have a durable, long career. Well, he exceeded expectations, but now the price tag for wide receivers goes up weekly.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to give $27 million and 70 a year and $70 million guaranteed. And that's complicated on the Niners because they're a run first team. They don't trust their quarterbacks, their pass protection, and he has to play running back. If you play him $27 million a year, you can't play him at running back anymore. And then his value kind of diminishes because that's part of what he does well. I could see the 49ers thinking all this through and saying, well, if he's holding out for $27 million a year, maybe we'll take if someone offers a first and a second next year, we'll think about it the way they thought about it, the way they pulled the trigger with Buckner. That's the comparison I'm making here.
I wouldn't do it if I were them because
Me neither.
Look how many draft picks they've invested and swung and missed on receivers. But
Agreed.
they are you kind of painted that perfectly. They're in a predicament. Why?
Yeah.
because the price tag has gone up for star receivers, and their star receiver they use as a goal line short yardage back.
So you can't do that. Wouldn't you agree that you can't really use him that way anymore if you're paying him $70 million guaranteed?
It wouldn't be wise.
Wouldn't be
you're gonna you're gonna subject him to a bunch of hits. I mean, think about that. No receiver. I can't think of too many receivers that are used as running backs, but I can't think of any that are used as short yardage backs. And that's where he's at right now.
I could just see Kyle being like, look, man, if we pay him all this money, I can't use him the way I need to use him. If I can't use him the way I need to use him, he's not worth as much to the team. And frankly, I made Debo. I made Kittle. I made Debo. My scheme supersedes everything. The only position I really need to pay top dollar for is left tackle because I can't scheme up a left tackle. But everyone else, I mean, you can give me 2 players and I can do what I can see Kyle talking that way. Maybe I'm wrong. But as the price tag goes up, I think things get more and more interesting.
It's a tough call because he's coming off a great year. He's your most popular player. He's your most dynamic weapon. Heck, you last week you said that their Super Bowl's window is open solely because of him. I think there's a lot of people that would agree with you on that. So they're in a predicament. Hopefully they can either find a better short yard. I would like to see them extend him, use him as a running back, but get a short yardage back in this draft that you feel confident in, because you're gonna have short yardage situations this year, and you don't want to be even tempted to use Debo.
Yeah, I mean they need all kind of running backs in my opinion. I mean they needed to sign a couple as undrafted free agents. They need a third down back. I don't really like JaMychal Hasty in that role, and they need a Mostert replacement. And Mostert was undrafted as well. I'm sure they can find guys late, but they need to try to do that.
That's the temptation too. It's like looking at the mock drafts, going through them the last couple of days. Man, when you get to 61, Kenneth Walker from Michigan State is sitting right there, and he may be there, and he's a terrific back. And it's like, do you take a running back that high when you took Mostert? You found Mostert after the draft. You just found Mitchell in the 6th round. Yeah. I don't know. They went high for Sermon. They traded up for him. It didn't necessarily work. We'll see how he plays this year, but that's going to be a dilemma on draft day. Do they reach for a running back?
Yeah, that's kind of, I've been thinking about that as well. If they draft a guard in round 2 at 61, if they draft a running back at 93, it's pretty much admitting you missed last year on Aaron Banks or Trey Sermon. I don't know if they're willing to do that because basically you're circling back and doing what you did last year and fixing a mistake.
You get in trouble when you do that. I mean, literally see Javon Kinlaw. You struck out on the D line. You went with Kinlaw. You probably should have gone with Wirfs. If you had Wirfs right now, you're in a better spot, I think, than Kinlaw. Kinlaw's, trying to establish himself in the NFL, and he can't even get on the field.
If you have Wirfs, you feel good about trading Buckner. That's the rub with that one. You actually could have been a good deal. All right, let me ask you a question. Another trade the Niners could do. Everyone's looking at the Panthers. There's 2 places that Jimmy Garoppolo could end up, Carolina or Seattle. I don't really see Seattle as being a serious contender because they know Jimmy for what he is. But Carolina, also Pete Carroll has job security. He doesn't need to bring in Jimmy Garoppolo and win right away. Matt Rule does. He's had a bunch of losing seasons. He needs to win right now. And if they don't get, let's say he's looking at Kenny Pickett. He wants Kenny Pickett, but the Saints jump ahead of them. Everyone's thinking the Saints are trying to trade up. And the Saints get Kenny Pickett. What does Matt Rule do? Does he trade for Jimmy Garoppolo? Or does he trade for Baker Mayfield? What do you think?
Well, that's a good call. That's a good question, because Mayfield's cheaper and probably healthier, even though he's had injuries. And some people would say better. But also Jimmy, there's, if leadership is your issue, then maybe you want Jimmy. I think Jimmy's way more mature and a way better potential leader than Baker. It's a tough call. And then the question is, I do think Carolina is the right team to center on, though, because Rule is gone at the end of the year if they lose, and with Sam Darnold, they're almost guaranteed to lose.
Right. So they got to do something. And even if they draft and pick it, like, that doesn't guarantee him a winning season this year.
Right. And Rule could still be out. You could draft a quarterback and then be out. So, yeah, I mean, that's a tough call. I think it's intriguing, too, from the 49er perspective. Maybe you make you offer some package of picks with Jimmy and see if you can get that 6th pick in the draft. Because if you had the 6th pick in the draft, Now you can do a series of trades back into the 20s or 30s or 40s and accumulate who knows how many picks in this draft and future drafts. And they may want that after what they spent last year for Lance.
Yeah, I'm thinking if Carolina gets desperate, the move is for Baker. I don't know how he feels about those two quarterbacks, and I know people love Jimmy Garoppolo's intangibles, but come on, I think Baker's better than him. And if you really, really need to win this year, the fact that Baker could be healthy for OTAs and minicamp and Jimmy Garoppolo won't be might be the deciding factor. Also, you mentioned Baker's cheaper financially this year. Like maybe they'd be okay trading a first round pick if Kenny Pickett isn't there for Baker Mayfield. I don't know.
That's the way really depends how they view Jimmy, because, like, first of all, what I'm suggesting is some kind of deal involving Darnold and taking Darnold back, and then restructuring his deal. But if you're Carolina, what's the difference between Jimmy and Darnold as far as winning games? I mean, maybe you feel it's significant, but you might feel that they're very similar. So we really don't know that. We don't have any insight into their thinking and how they would compare the two.
Also, I think Carolina, I'm low on Garoppolo, but I think Carolina would learn that Jimmy's not that different than Sam Darnold. The main difference to me between Sam Darnold and Jimmy is where they've been. If you put Sam Darnold on the Niners, I think Kyle could prop him up the way he props up Jimmy. What they have in common, the two of the lowest football IQ quarterbacks in the league, they have no clue what they're looking at, and they make some of the worst decisions ever, and they do it consistently. Yeah. And the reason that Jimmy Garoppolo keeps winning is he's been with Bill Belichick and Kyle Shanahan. Sam Darnold hasn't. So, Matt Rule, please make that mistake.
I'll tell you where there are others where they're also really similar. These are two quarterbacks, Grant, that make the same mistake over and over and over again.
Yes.
That's usually a sign of your pedigree as a player. Is right. Do you make a mistake and learn from your mistake, or do you make a mistake and repeat your mistakes? And I think Darnold and Jimmy both repeat their mistakes. So that would be a major issue as far as I'm concerned. How about the other angle on this thing? If Lance, what will happen if the Niners came out and said Lance is our guy, he's our starter? Is Jimmy going to request a trade publicly, or is everything that's going to go on with this is from his end with Don Yee going to happen behind the scenes? Because that would change the dynamic and maybe change the leverage if he publicly came out and said, I want out, get me out of here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he can request a trade. Like the Niners are trying. I think they made it clear we want to trade you, and he said, "Great, trade me." But what the Niners are going to say is, "Well, we can't trade you, and we're not going to. You're too good to release. We want you as our backup." And what Jimmy could say is, "Please, I've been a good guy. I never complained. It's my contract year. Don't make me be a backup. Don't do this to me. Do the right thing. I've always been right by you. I didn't take the surgery late just to spite you. I honestly tried to rehab. It's a misunderstanding, yada, yada, yada. Do right by me."
Yeah.
And that could give the Niners the out to be like, look, we didn't want to do this, but Jimmy requested his release. And you know what? We love Jimmy, and we don't want any hard feelings. So even though it's not business 101, it's not the best practice. We're going to do it for Jimmy. I mean, I think it's the best outcome, but I don't know that Jimmy will do it. It doesn't seem like it's really in character for him.
If he did do that and asked them behind the scenes, hey, release me, okay, and they did that, but they did it on their own terms at the beginning of camp when they wanted to allocate that money to Debo and Bosa, what's the reaction to that in the room? Because Kyle's very popular, Lynch is very popular. These guys are very popular with their team. Would they lose some popularity in the room if they are viewed to have damaged Jimmy's chances of getting a starting gig somewhere else?
That's true. That's possible. But I think it would be even worse if they held on to him all throughout camp and then cut him right before the final cuts, like the Patriots did with Cam Newton. I mean, the longer they hold on to him, the more that happens. The more people feel like you wronged Jimmy Garoppolo. But if you cut him as soon as he can pass his physical and say, look, we're not just going to give you $7.5 million check to walk away, but as soon as you can pass a physical, we'll cut you and you can leave. I mean, at least that would give the locker room clarity. Okay, our quarterback is Trey Lance. Got it. At least we know. Because last year we knew it was Jimmy Garoppolo. You made it clear. This year, no one's saying anything. You're like, it's probably going to be Trey Lance, but we can't really say it. Like, that's not good enough.
Right.
It's not, you got to let the locker room know. You got to let the fans know who to support. Because if we'll talk about it in a little bit. So yeah, I think I would like him to request. It would be because John Lynch isn't going to step up. No one's going to do this unless Jimmy is the leader, and he is a natural leader. So hopefully he'll take the decision out of the Niners' hands.
Well, I think everybody at this point has Garoppolo trade exhaustion. The players, the executives, the fans, the media, everybody. Yes. So it's like, I think there'll be more focus. I mean, whatever. The one thing about this is that we all know the climate. Whatever the Niners do, there'll be an army of people saying it was the right move. They'll be like, literally,
that's true.
You think it was the right move? I think it was the really right move. You think it was the really right move? I think it's the perfect move. I mean, literally, there'll be people fighting each other to tell the public how great the move was.
Yeah, it's a cottage industry in the Bay Area. You just sort of say that not only are the local teams smart, not only are they doing the right thing, but they're brilliant. Right. They're light years ahead of the rest of the competition. Exactly. It's like, yeah, I guess.
And there was no other choice to be made. That's the other little wrinkle that gets thrown in. They did the right thing. They're worlds ahead of everybody else. And it was the only move that made any sense.
It's funny. You've had Vish on your show a couple of times. Vish is
he was great today. We had him on earlier.
Oh, nice. Vish is just baffled by Bay Area sports coverage. He's like, I'm in Chicago. They don't do it like this out here. No. I mean, they say it how it is with the Chicago.
Right.
But Niners are much different. Anyway, we have an East Coast style over here, I'd like to think. I got a question for you.
Okay.
Let's say Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't request a release and the Niners don't trade him, and this just drags on, and there's a quarterback competition, and Lance wins it because it seems like the Niners kind of want him to play this year. Kyle said that's why they're trying to trade Jimmy. From Lance's perspective, if Jimmy's on the team as the backup, is there anything he can do? I mean, of course, winning the Super Bowl. Is there any sort of winning the Super Bowl and winning an MVP that would satisfy his critics?
For Lance?
Yeah.
He would have to have noticeably better numbers, I think, or a noticeably better win percentage. He's either have to win games or, do what he did in college, 22 touchdowns and 1 pick.
Yep.
Some crazy, touchdown to interception ratio or something where he demonstrated that he was, to the naked eye, that he is a major upgrade from Jimmy. So, I think that's a tough position to be in. First of all, what if they let him come to camp? Oh, thumb, now he's hurt, whatever he's hurt. I don't know that if I'm the Niners that I would allow Jimmy to put on a uniform this year without renegotiating. I got to renegotiate. I can't have him in camp I can't have a $25 million backup quarterback. And people saying, well, hey, this guy's making all the money. Maybe he should play. No, this can be no hemming or hawing or half stepping. It's commitment. At this point, you did kind of last year. Now you need to commit. You invested the capital in Lance. You told everybody he was the guy you wanted. You've told everybody time and time again, that's the guy you want. Now you got to actually follow through. If you do anything that shows some kind of we're going with Lance, but no, I think that really hurts you. It hurts you in the court of public perception with the fans, and it hurts you in the locker room. So the only way Jimmy's there as the 2 is if he takes a dramatic pay cut. I can't take a chance that you got $25 million wasted in a second quarterback who's not on the field and can't play because of an injury. Can't happen.
I don't see him taking a pay cut unless he gets an extension. I think he'd rather just get released and go elsewhere. But the way I see this is if he's in here in camp and there's a quarterback competition, I've already seen it's played out last year, although it wasn't an official competition. There's nothing Jimmy Garoppolo can do to change people's mind. There are so many people on the team, in the media room, and in the fan base that are just sold on him because of his winning record. It's 33-15. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what he does in practice. I saw it last year. He threw 11 picks in training camp. It was disgusting. It was disgusting. But it didn't matter because we know what Jimmy can do. Jimmy's been here. Jimmy's taken us there. Jimmy's done that. Every single throw of Trey Lance gets overanalyzed because he's only started 2 games. And if a guy drops a ball, it's Trey's fault. He threw it too hard. The spiral wasn't good enough. If the defense takes a step back, people will be like, well, Jimmy Garoppolo's a better leader. He would have inspired someone to make. I mean, it'll be ridiculous. Like, there's nothing. I really feel like Lance won't be able to win well enough. The win wasn't good, unless, of course, it's just way different. But the schedule's harder this year, and the offensive line is worse. Like, it could be, they could go 8-9. They almost went 8-9-8 last year. They had some very close wins at the end. They were almost not a playoff. So anyway, some luck could go differently this year. Some injuries could happen, and boom, it's his fault. Well, Jimmy would have been. And I think if Jimmy were gone, you wouldn't have this. No one would care about Jimmy anymore. He's not on the team. You know how fans are. Fans are like really fiercely loyal as long as the guy's on the team. Once he's history, he's history. I don't care about you anymore. Goodbye.
Well, I think one thing that has to be emphasized is that the bottom line is not the record. The bottom line is the results of the trade efforts. That's the bottom line, because the record, it's an impressive record, but it's a team record. It's a 53-man roster. It's not a quarterback record. And people use that as the bottom line. That's not the bottom line. The bottom line is he was available for every team in the league to go make a trade for, and nobody wanted him, and nobody made an offer. I mean, or if it was an offer, it wasn't any good. So I think everybody kind of knows right now that's the bottom line on Jimmy is, you know what? It's not the record. It's how many teams in the trade market wanted him.
But I feel like it's almost like it's like a civil war of 49er fans. And as long as Jimmy's on the team, you enable this whole faction of 30, 40, 45% of fans that feel Jimmy's better. Jimmy got wronged. Jimmy got blamed for everything. Now we're going to give Trey the same treatment. Get ready, Trey. Every single missed throw, every single decision you make, every loss is your fault. And if you don't like it, well, that's the way it was for Jimmy. As soon as Jimmy's off the team, that faction of the fan base is gone. They either follow Jimmy to his next team or they fall in line. I've seen it so many times. As soon as the guy's off the team, all that fierce loyalty is gone. You're history. You're not you're not part of the family anymore. Sorry, dude. But as long as he's here, you're inviting that. And it's not just the players. It's not just the fans. It's the players too. How many players are just BFFs with Jimmy and are always going to see it from his perspective? The tight end?
Well, I mean, how about Emmanuel Sanders this week? He made him sound like he was Joe Montana and Dan Marino all wrapped into one.
I'm telling you.
Dude, what are you talking about? I mean,
but at the same time, you can't fight it. Like, that's the perception of Jimmy. That's what Trey Lance is working against here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I'll say this.
Guy of all time, Larry.
Yeah, exactly. He's a leader. Guys step it up for him. You know, more than anything, you know, Football Scout told me a couple year ago that the one thing with Trey Lance is that defenses will have to defend every blade of grass.
Yep.
And they don't have to with Garoppolo, and everybody knows it. So teams cheat in, and, you know, they know that he can't complete passes outside the numbers, especially down the field. So they're always going to cheat in. They're always going to be looking for the in-breaking route. If they don't know which way to break, they're going to break in, you know, and eventually, you know, it just becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like, you know what? This is what it is. With Lance, yeah, is he raw? Does he need to be coached up? Yes. Does he need to improve? Yes. Does he need to throw a better ball? Yes. But he also will make you defend every blade of grass. And I think that's a huge part of why they made this decision in the first place. And now it's just a matter of, you know, out with the old and in with the new. But you're right. There's a lot of people that will just look at Jimmy and just say, you know what, you know, he would have been better if this, and he was this, and he was that. There'll always be people that will be in his corner. But don't use the record anymore, because the 49ers are an enormously talented roster. And that is as much to do with their record as anything Garoppolo has done.
I know, but the thing with Garoppolo is since nothing about, like, his allure has nothing to do with his skill set. It's all about his intangibles and his win-loss record. The fact that he's 33-15, the fact that he started his career 7-0. I mean, if Trey Lance does any worse than that, it's like, sorry, bud. Sorry, I guess you just don't have the intangibles. I guess the players just don't fight as hard for you. I mean, that's what he's really up. There's nothing he can do. Jimmy has magic on his side, according to his fans. He just wins. Doesn't matter how. Doesn't matter if he's the worst player on the offense. He just wins. Trey better win too. And I'm just pointing out, it's a different team this year. It's a different schedule this year. Anyway, the Niners, if they know what's good for them, they will get Jimmy off the roster. But I'm afraid that Kyle and John think they can control this. They can control the media narrative. They can control their locker room. They can tell everyone to be a big, happy family. Like, That is not realistic. People are going
Yeah.
to pick sides, and Trey Lance is going to get more skepticism than you've ever seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just people that think that Jimmy's an elite guy, so if that's your premise, the old saying, if your premise is wrong, your conclusion by definition will be wrong. So if your premise is that Jimmy's a phenomenal quarterback, then wherever you go conclusion wise after that is going to be wrong.
They treat him like he's a Super Bowl winner as opposed to a Super Bowl loser.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like, this was before my time, but the LA Raiders in the 80s, when they had Plunkett toward the end and he was hurt and they could never really make the transition to Mark Wilson because the team had won with Plunkett and they were all in with Plunkett, and they had both of them on the team, and Mark Wilson was never going to get the support. I didn't live through that, but I know football history. Anyway, so that's my comparison.
I've heard, their announcer last week on the radio called Jimmy a Super Bowl quarterback. I'm like, wait.
Oh my God.
You're calling him a Super Bowl
quarterback?
Call him
that. So Rex Grossman's a Super Bowl quarterback then.
Right. David Woodley was a Super Bowl quarterback.
All right, enough quarterbacks for now. Let me ask you a cornerback question.
Okay.
So the 49ers re-signed Jason Verrett because the way I look at it, when he's healthy, which is every blue moon,
right?
Man, I mean, he's better than Charvarius Ward. He's better than anyone the Niners have. He's really freaking good.
Yeah. He's got Pro Bowl feet.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys got awesome feet, and he's from Fairfield. Right. And he ball skills, feet, everything. He's got what you're looking for. Yeah. He just doesn't have durability. But you know what? Because he doesn't have durability, everybody in the league knows it. I don't think there's going to be a big market for him. So absolutely, I want him because he's, when the secret to, quality coverage is quality coverage. I mean, there is no secret. You have to have guys, and he's, if he's healthy, he can cover. And that's really where all I want to break down on him. I mean, I hope that he's healthy. I'm not going to build my team, Grant, so that I'm depending on him like they did last year. And but I would like to have him. And if he's healthy, I've got a really good corner. I mean, I think he's near a Pro Bowl caliber corner when he's on the field and healthy and playing good ball. So just a matter of getting him healthy, but also getting him at your price. And if they can get him at their price, absolutely bring him back. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it almost makes more sense than signing him last year did. Last year, they gave him a contract that was incentive-based, but still, they were like, you're a starter. And they didn't really have a backup plan if he went down. They had to go get Josh Norman off the street. This year, it's like they don't need him. They got Charvarius Ward. Corner isn't even a particularly big need for the 49ers. They need a nickel, but why not give him like the vet minimum, $800,000 to come do training camp with them? If he plays well, you make the team. If not, goodbye. I mean, I think absolutely, because you might just end up with your starters being Jason Verrett and Charvarius Ward. Now you actually have something.
Well, and you need corners. I mean, look at this year. I mean, you had a guy out there in Norman who couldn't do anything except for force a fumble.
Yeah,
I mean, couldn't stay within a country mile of a receiver. The idea of a corner mirroring a receiver up and down the field, that's like a foreign concept to Norman. So It's like you need, and what would Verrett be on this team? He'd be like your fourth corner. If Jason Verrett is your fourth or fifth corner, you got a good football team. So I would re-sign him and make him your fourth or fifth corner.
Yeah, he could start off there, and if he's healthy, then he could actually be your number one corner. He's good.
He's outstanding. Are the Niners a playoff team from your perspective right now, as we sit here before the draft? We got about 3 weeks till draft day. Are the 49ers currently a playoff team?
I'm not so sure, Larry. I mean, last year they squeaked in. They had to have that overtime win in Cincinnati. They had to have the overtime win against the Rams. I mean, really, they came down to the wire. And last year, the schedule was easier. They played the AFC South last year. This year, they played the AFC West. They could legitimately lose all 4 of those games. Like, I don't think Niner fans understand how hard this schedule is. Colin Cowherd came out with his top 10 teams. Whatever, it's Colin Cowherd, but Buffalo, the Rams, Tampa, Denver, Kansas City, Cincinnati, the Chargers, the Raiders, Baltimore, and the Niners. So you could dispute that, but the Niners play 6 of those teams, and one of them twice. So 7 of their games are 2 against the Rams, 1 against Tampa, 1 against Denver, 1 against Kansas City, 1 against the Chargers, 1 against the Raiders. They could lose. They'll probably be underdogs in all 7 of those games. Let's say they win 2 of them. They would have to win 8 of their remaining 10 games to be 10-7. So I think they could definitely be 10-7 this year, but it's going to be probably harder this year to be 10-7 than it was last year. And it took everything they had just to be 10-7 last year. To me, it looks like a 9-8 team, and maybe 9-8 gets you into the playoffs. But I mean, look at the Saints. The Saints missed it last year because they were down to Trevor Siemian and Ian Book. Now they're going to have Jameis, Taysom Hill, who both win for them, and probably a rookie quarterback too. So they're going to be good. I mean, I think the Cardinals are still good. And if the Niners have to play them early in the year when Kyler Murray's still healthy, they could lose like they did last year. I don't know, man. I think they're definitely in danger of missing the playoffs. And they really need to nail it in the draft. Let's put it that way.
No, I agree with you. It's a weird schedule this year because I agree it's a difficult schedule, but it's very travel friendly.
Yes.
Like if you check, I don't think they got a snow game. I don't think they go west of the or east of the Mississippi like after like week 3 or something like that. I mean, it's like real. They don't have the cumbersome, ugly travel that teams way out on the West Coast typically have, right? Because you said they're matching up in the AFC West, so they have a very favorable travel schedule, but some really tough football teams. But I think they're absolutely in danger of not making the playoffs. Why? Because look at their football team. You just lost DJ Jones. He's the anchor of your defense. You're depending on a guy with chronic knee problems to man that run game. If Javon Kinlaw misses a half dozen games, would that shock anybody? No. And if a guy like that misses a half dozen games, you don't have DJ Jones anymore. You could be susceptible to runs in the A gaps, and that just you want to break a defense down at its core. Just start running through the A gaps, and then suddenly everything's wide open. So Kinlaw, you're leaning on Kinlaw. What is he going to be? We don't know. You're leaning on an offensive line that's Trent Williams and 4 question marks.
Yes.
And Aaron Banks is your plug and play at left guard. He couldn't even get active last year.
Right.
Your center's on the verge of retirement. Your right guard's a street free agent. Your right tackle's coming off of a major career altering type injury. Your offensive line may be crap. Yeah. So you get a first year starter at quarterback. Yeah. You just lost your ace running back. Debo's coming off of a career year. Who knows how he'll bounce back? He's had a lot of soft tissue injuries. You got an offensive line with question marks.
Are you going to keep playing him at running back too? Now that you're paying him $27 million a year. Sorry, keep going.
Right. There's just a lot. I mean, so they're acting like they've got this elite, awesome dynasty type team, and that they just needed to shore up special teams, and now all is right with the world. But if you look closely, they're not as good on the line of scrimmage. Nope. And you've got a first-year starter at quarterback behind a line that has a great left tackle and 4 question marks. So,
and the schedule's way tougher.
The schedule's way tougher. The division is brutal. The team that you should beat on paper owns you in Seattle. So, no, I think the 49ers are definitely in danger of missing the playoffs, and I wouldn't even be shocked if it happened.
So again, let's say they go 2-7 against, let's say they beat the Rams once, they beat the Raiders once, they lose to Tampa, Denver, Kansas City, and the Chargers. They would have to go 8-2 in the following stretch. They have 2 games against Arizona, 2 games against Seattle. They lost. They went 0-4 against Arizona and Seattle last year. Lost to Colt McCoy. They got Miami at home. They got New Orleans at home. I mean,
Miami's good.
Miami's good. New Orleans is good. Yeah. Washington, not a terrible team. I mean, it's tough. So this is a team that actually could go 6-11, 7-10. I'm not predicting that. I'd like to see what their Thursday night games are and if they have any back-to-back road games, that kind of stuff. But man, seems like a bad year to downgrade in the offensive line and on the lines in general. I'm just saying.
Well, and DJ Jones, you can't be this underrated, quiet, key cog and then lose the guy and then suddenly it doesn't matter. Here Hassan Ridgeway rolls in and suddenly you're back to the normal. No, Ridgeway is more of a pass rusher in a rotation. DJ Jones was an anchor who closed off the A gaps and wouldn't allow opposing teams to run up the middle. You saw in the Super Bowl against Kansas City when you didn't have them, how different that defense looked just from how it had looked previously.
That's a great point.
A lot of pressure on Banks, a lot of pressure on Trey, a lot of pressure on McGlinchey, a lot of pressure on Kinlaw. And I don't know that, that's a lot of pressure on some really just okay players. I would say
A lot
they're
of
going to
pressure
need a
on
whale of a
George
draft.
Odom or Talanoa Hufanga or whoever they draft to play strong safety full time. So,
Well, not to mention, I mean, if you lose Jimmy Ward at any point, and Jimmy Ward's had a lot of injuries, what is your secondary looking like?
Yeah, not good. So look, I don't mean to go sky's falling. The schedule isn't even out yet. We'll find out in a couple of weeks where I'll make my prediction. We'll make our prediction of their exact record then. But I want to say they need to nail this draft.
It's not just a beside the point kind of a draft. It's a crucial, integral, vital, draft for them to not just get starters, but to get quality backups.
Yeah, I mean, usually in free agency, you fill your hole so you can take best player available in the draft. Niners didn't do that. The Niners created holes in free agency, focused on special teams, and now they have to fill holes in the draft. Not easy to do.
No.
I mean, let's start at 61. I think the Niners have to get a starter here, and they could choose 4 or 5 different positions. Who do you think they should take at 61?
Well, I think they should go best player available throughout this draft because I don't think
strategy.
I look at their roster as a ton of needs, but no primary need. So I guess if I said what's the primary need, I would say it's what I just described, safety. And I think Jimmy Ward's future is in the box. And so I'm looking for a free safety. And I would probably Nick Cross from Maryland at 61. He's likely to be on the board. If he's there, that would be a hard guy for me to pass up because and I just said I'd go best player available. So I'm probably going a different position, but Nick Cross, if there is a need, in my opinion, it's free safety. And because the Niners love their cover 3. And if you're going to play cover 3, you got to have that safety that has good instincts and wheels. And there's guys with, wheels and no instincts, Tarvarius Moore, or there are guys that have great instincts and no wheels. But you got to have both to play the deep middle in a cover 3. And so there are very few guys who have both, who are usually on the board in the second round. I like Nick Cross, but it's very thin at that spot. There's good safeties, but not a lot that can cover like Cross. So I'd lean towards him, Grant, but I probably, if I was going on need, but I'd probably go best player available.
Well, we're thinking along the same lines at safety, free safety in particular. They could go, they could take an edge rusher here and justify it. There'd be good ones, and you can always use more edge rushers. But they need a starting strong safety. And I think they could get a pretty good one at 61. It's hard to look at the different NFL.com, CBS, and get accurate stock reports for these late second round prospects. Nick Cross just got mocked to the Niners by Todd McShay. It's a good pick. I would go with Kirby. What's the dude's name?
Joseph.
Kirby Joseph from Illinois. I know him. Kirby Joseph, because he had 5 picks last year. And I watched his tape. He really does make plays from center field. You can put him at single high. He had interceptions where he started at single high, got all the way to the sideline, and made an interception outside the numbers. I can't remember the last time I saw a Niner safety do that. So the knock on him is he's not a big hitter, not a great. The Niners have so many good tacklers in the secondary. Could they just for once focus on a DB whose best attribute is his ball skills? That's all I'm saying. There's no way they draft Kirby Joseph. It's so not their kind of DB, but I would love it. They'll probably get someone who's more like Tart.
Well, it's a different league now. It's a different league. I mean, and think about who's making the picks. The guy who was the ultimate cruncher in the secondary. But, now blowing a guy up just brings you a 15-yard penalty. So there's no advantage in having Deshaun Goldson. There's no advantage in having John Lynch. There's no advantage in having Dante Whitner. You need a coverage guy. You need Merton Hanks.
Yes.
You need a glorified corner. Yes. So, I mean, I know the Niners have gone with thumpers who separate, receivers from the football in the past. It's time to prioritize ball skills in the secondary.
Thank you. What they do, and they've been doing it since Parag's been there, is they value
intimidators,
versatility. Let's put it that way. Because Tart and Ward are like that. They're interchangeable. They can cover. You could put them on. You could put them in the slot. They're good in coverage. They're good at tackling. They don't force turnovers. I mean, look, we've seen an entire career from Jimmy Ward and Jaquiski Tart. It's not what they do. They're versatile though, and they're good tacklers, solid players. They're good at everything. but they're not splash players. One guy in the second. It's not Ward. It's not Travarius Ward. It's not Jimmy Ward. Just one playmaker. I mean, is that so much to ask? But for I feel like Parag thinks they're too expensive. You know, you ball skills. You gotta pay for ball skills. Like, yeah,
well, you do. Well, in the free agent market, you do.
Yes,
but you know, but here's the thing: the game has changed, and it's changed in a 5-year window. Look at who does this team have at safety? Who they played at linebacker this year? Marcel Harris. Marcel Harris is in the old way of thinking.
Right.
He separates receivers from the ball, and you know that's what they're looking for. But now that player is just getting penalized. Now you need coverage ability, coverage ability, and ball skills, and break on the football. So, what's the best indicator of NFL interception production? Is collegiate interception production. So go, it's like sacks. Guys who sack the quarterback. You sack them in college, you sack them in the pros. Same thing with picks. There's no such thing as the DB that gets no picks in college, shows up in the NFL, and suddenly he's a pick machine. It doesn't happen. So you need to prioritize ball production and turnover production.
They never do.
No.
So we're trying.
They've been looking for thumpers. They've been looking for guys who intimidate. Deshaun Goldson, John Lynch, Dante Whitner.
My prediction is that they're going to draft. They're going to draft. Hold on, Jaquan Brisker, who's also good. But he's Jaquiski Tart. He's versatile. He can play free. He can play strong. Not great ball skills. They're probably going to lean toward a guy like that. Good player, but I would go for Kirby Joseph. All right, let's go to 93.
Okay.
Who do you think the Niners should take with their first third-round pick? That's 93.
This is tough because obviously it's going to be predicated a little bit on what they do before that, right? But just give you, to me, now you're looking at need. Do you go pass rusher, like a Sam Williams, Ole Miss, something like that? If he falls, Majai Sanders from Cincinnati, maybe he falls. There's a number of good edge rushers, and I think that's the sweet spot. Michael Clemons, I think, is the best guy that will be on the board at that point from Texas A&M. He's had some problems off the field, but he's a terrific pass rusher, and he would instantly step in as a starter opposite Bosa. So I'm looking at that position. I'm looking at edge rushers. If I went safety with Nick Cross early, then maybe I don't have to worry about safety. I'm looking for Danny Gray, the SMU wide receiver, who's a very much a vertical threat, explosive runner, the kind of guy that you just watch him run a couple routes and your defensive coordinator's like, oh man, we can't let this guy get behind us. So either a vertical threat wide receiver or a pass rusher. Or I'd even go best player available there as well. I think the 49ers, more than anything, they're so roster. What they really need from day one and day two picks, they need difference makers. They need great football players, guys who are going to wind up in the Pro Bowl, regardless of position. Yeah. And I would emphasize great football players over position of need throughout this draft, and then just take a look what you have when the thing's over. That's how you draft great football players. How you draft busts is start reaching for positional need.
It's true. It's interesting, though. You said if you had to go for need, you're looking wide receiver and edge here. I'm thinking that with the next pick. With this pick, but I am thinking those two. I just would put one other position.
Like offensive line?
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to draft an offensive lineman with the 93rd pick, but I don't know if the Niners have left themselves a lot of choice here. And they really could. You could argue they need a tackle.
What kind of O lineman do you want? You want a tackle? You want a guard? You want a Cam Jurgens from Nebraska, a center? You want a road grading guard? I love Zion Johnson from Boston College, but he's probably going to go late first.
Probably, yeah, he's good. I was thinking Sean Ryan from UCLA.
UCLA, yeah, no, I like him. He had a really great career at UCLA.
Yeah, he played left tackle. He gave up only 2 sacks, and he was really good as a run blocker. Now he has extremely short arms, like 32.5 inches. So maybe he can't play tackle. Although maybe he's better than Mike McGlinchey as a right tackle. I mean, you need a right tackle. Week 1, it could be him. And if not, you could move him to guard. He also said he'd be willing to try center.
I like that pick. I like that pick, but arm length for a tackle is everything. Suddenly I'm Trent Baalke. Now I'm Trent Baalke over here. You need arm length.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, that's a big that changes your angle, as you're pass blocking and when you're setting in pass protection. If you have long arms, you have 35, 36-inch arms.
Yeah.
Now you've got more room to operate against these speed rushers. So short arm tackles, I'm not a fan of, but I like Ryan. And
as a guard.
As a guard.
Yeah.
I guess my question would be, where's the real need? I got to find out from McGlinchey. Where are you in your rehab? I got to talk to my doctors. Where's McGlinchey? All right. If McGlinchey's not ready to roll, how do we feel about Jalen Moore?
Yeah.
To me,
just in school.
To me, I would rather go for athletes on defense or skill position guys who can really change the dynamic, the feel of the team. Like a dynamic receiver on the slot, a dynamic running back. I'd rather take a dynamic skill position guy or an athlete or somebody who commanded a double team in the front seven over a guard. Maybe it's because they got to the NFC Championship game. They had Tom Compton at right tackle and Daniel Brunskill at right guard, and they won the Super Bowl. I talked to Pops about this one, but they had Dan Audick at left guard in 1981. He was like 258 pounds, and they won the Super Bowl. Now it's a different era, but you know what I'm saying. You can get by with a guard that you just pick off the street and plug in, or a tackle like we saw with Compton. But you're not getting by with no corners, and you're not getting by with no vertical threat, and you're not getting by if you don't have running back depth and you lose Elijah Mitchell. So it's like, you know what I'm saying? To me, I understand the need for the offensive lineman.
I do,
but I would deprioritize that.
To me, it's just the biggest weakness on the team, and the guys the Niners are hoping step up are guys that I thought they drafted with the intention of them being backups, like Colton Kiv. Even if McGlinchey comes back, let's put it this way: even if McGlinchey comes back, he's not good. He wasn't good before he got hurt. He's going to be worse now. I know they made it far with Tom Compton, but Tom Compton was awful, and eventually he turned into a pumpkin, and he was terrible, and they didn't make it to the Super Bowl. Like, I don't know. I guess if just making the playoffs is the goal, then this offensive line is good enough. But anyway, the Niners do have a lot of needs, and if they went edge rusher here at round 3, that would be cool. They have another pick 12 picks later, 105. What would you do here?
I got it. First of all, now I'm going, if I went best player available on the first 2, I got to go need here. Mm-hmm. So and I don't like to be in a need position, but I think the value is at edge rusher. To me, that's where you're going to find guys. Or if you have somebody like that's a real sleeper, player who's a skill position guy. The guy that I think a lot of is the Idaho State wide receiver Tanner Connor, who's 6'3", 235 pounds, and ran in the 4.3s, and really has a lot of athleticism. And he's vaulting from 5th round range into like the late 3rd, maybe early 3rd. That would be intriguing to me if you didn't get a receiver earlier. I think I got to have a defensive back, though, Grant. If I didn't go DB in those first 2 picks, I got to have a DB. I got to have either another corner who I believe in. If I'm not bringing Verrett back, I got to have a free safety. I got to have a nickel. One of those 3 needs in the secondary. I like some day 3 strong safeties. So if they felt good about Jimmy Ward at free, then there's some day 3 strong safeties that I think I'd be interested in. But if you're still staring at, you haven't addressed your secondary, to me, secondary then has to vault to the front of the line.
You went to wide receiver though. I'm going to wide receiver too. I feel like the Niners, if you really want a legit deep threat who could contribute as a rookie, this is a good spot. And there's a guy from Notre Dame, Kevin Austin Jr.
Yeah,
he ran a 4.43, 6'2", 39-inch vert. He averaged 18 yards a catch. He only really had 1 season at Notre Dame, but he was a legit deep threat. And if you watch his highlights, like he's not just, he's winning a lot of contested balls. He gets up, he makes difficult catches down the field. Not a big yak guy, but he's a legit deep threat. And if they don't take this one, I don't know if there's many more left in the draft.
The one thing about the receiver is I just want to make sure that whatever receiver they get can handle Trey Lance's fastball. So I want to watch. I got to see when I'm rolling that film back and forth on these draft eligible receivers. I got to see somebody with well above average hands, because Trey's throwing rockets and some of them are going to have the high speed wobble to them. And you better have premier hands and ball skills, or you're going to struggle with this quarterback. He's not Joe Montana, who's going to throw with a perfect spiral and it's very catchable. The downside of Trey, from what I can tell, is his ball has some snap on his release. He's got some wobble to his spiral, and that puts a premium on receivers that have elite ball skills. So that would be my one concern. You can't get a receiver who's going to really struggle catching his high heat, because it's coming. He's going to throw it high, and it's going to come hard, and it's going to have some wobble to it, and you better be able to pluck it with your hands out of the air.
It's interesting you say that, because there's a receiver on this team who doesn't have the best hands, doesn't have the widest wingspan, tends to drop a few balls. You know what I'm talking about?
Debo.
Yeah. I mean, Debo's a really good fit with Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah.
Jimmy throws a really catchable ball. Debo drops a bunch of passes, but he can. I wonder how that's going to go. Debo's just another reason for Kyle Shanahan and Parag Marate to think twice about giving him $70 million guaranteed.
Yeah, and then at the same time, is there a team out there that's going to give you 5 picks like the Dolphins just gave Kansas City for Tyreek? Typically, I would take a 5-for-1 trade, but I don't know, man. I could come up. I could literally list you 20 wide receivers in the last decade that the 49ers have drafted with high hopes for, and they're all crap. I mean, DeAndre Smelter, come on down.
Oh. Hey, Dante Pettis. Look, for the record, I'm against trading Debo Samuel, but there is like a list of 18 reasons why the Niners would consider it. All right, last topic of the day. This is nothing to do with. This is just a fun topic. Who would you rather have in their prime? Best running back of all time on the Niners in their prime: Frank Gore, Roger Craig, and why?
Roger Craig. The best of Roger Craig was better than the best of Frank Gore. Frank Gore is durable, and Frank Gore, the longevity it's unbelievable. I mean, he's like the Nolan Ryan of NFL running backs. I mean, the guy didn't even wear knee pads like the last decade in the league. I'm not even joking. I mean, you were out there at camp, you saw it. If he got fined for not wearing knee pads. But Roger Craig was a better receiver. They were equal blockers. Roger Craig, was a Pro Bowler at running back and at fullback. Arguably the greatest Niner team of all time was the 84 Niners. He was the star of the 84 Niners Super Bowl, game against the Dolphins with 3 touchdowns. He's the only guy in the history of the 7 team he was on the all-decade team. And if you look at the all-decade team, 70s, 80s, 90s, he's the only one of those three decades not in the Hall of Fame. Roger Craig, Grant, and your dad could speak to this probably better than anybody, but Jerry Rice is the greatest statistical, player in the history of the league. What he's done to receiving records, even in a pass-happy league, the guys don't approach his numbers even today. So Jerry's numbers were incredible, and he was totally motivated by insecurity. He was always thinking somebody was going to take his job, shockingly, but that's how he played.
Right.
So the Niners knew that, and they fed him the ball. And you've been in these locker rooms at the end of games. How many times do you go into a winning locker room and the running backs had a big day and the receivers didn't, or the receivers had a big day and the running backs didn't?
Yeah.
It's hard to have 120 yards and 2 touchdown receiver and 120 yard, 2 touchdown running back in the same game. The Niners, Brent Jones, Ricky Waters, John Taylor, but most specifically Roger Craig, those guys' numbers are all suppressed by Jerry's numbers being so in the stratosphere. True. So Roger is not a product of his numbers. Roger is a product of winning. And to me, Craig at his best was better than Gore at his best.
Look, you've seen both in their prime. Roger Craig in his prime was before my time. So all I can say, let me just speak on behalf of Frank Gore, because I watched it, I covered it. He was great. And just in terms of running the ball, I think Gore was better than Roger Craig. Just running the ball. Like the way I
Better
look at
body
Craig,
lean, better, hit the
yeah,
hole
this
harder.
could get smaller, could get through smaller holes. I mean, watching him run to me was like watching Emmitt Smith 2.0. And the difference was that Emmitt Smith got to play behind the best offensive line of all time, and Gore didn't. But Gore got a year with Norv Turner, and that year he averaged 5.5 yards a carry, 1,600 rushing yards. He was phenomenal. I just think Gore had to play for crap teams in his 20s until Jim Harbaugh got here. Anyway, Gore was underrated. I think Gore should have been an all-pro. I think he was like the closest thing to Emmitt Smith is Emmitt Smith, but he wasn't really a weapon as a receiver. And Roger Craig is like one of the most, he's like, up there with Marshall Faulk. So yeah, I would go with Roger Craig because he was a great running back too.
Craig also, I think, was a better teammate. Now, I know that's kind of controversial because people would say, how the hell do you know? Well, Roger Craig was all about the team. And I can remember standing at Frank Gore's locker after a game, and you might have been standing right next to me. And he said to the media, he pointed to Carlos Hyde, who was a rookie, who absolutely idolized him, and he was 3 feet away. And he said, he's pointing at Hyde as Hyde's taking his pads off. He got all the easy runs, and I got all the hard runs. And he said that in the locker room. And what he meant by it, and I understood what he meant by it. What he meant by it was, the gun runs on 3rd and long, they handed to Hyde, and they're expecting pass.
Looked good.
Yeah, and Hyde suddenly would rumble for 8 or 9 yards.
Right.
And because it was a gun run, everybody's thinking it's going to be a pass, and here comes the handoff. Oh, you surprised him. Where Gore was like, hey, his runs came in more run-specific downs, and there was guys in the box, looking for him. And I understood it, but it's just, you don't say that. Good teammates don't say that. And you definitely don't say that when you're the veteran in the room and he's the rookie in the room. And Hyde was right there, and his eyes got big when Frank said that. But Frank was emotional in some situations. I will say this, though, about Frank.
He had a major chip on his shoulder.
He played with a chip on his shoulder, but also nobody was more distraught after the Super Bowl in New Orleans than Frank. Nobody. I mean, the look on his face, how he wore that loss, and probably because they had 1st and goal on the 5 and he never touched the ball again. I mean, that probably had a lot to do with it. Yeah. But I mean, Frank was both Roger and Frank equal competitors who just live to win, and both great guys. But I think Roger was a little bit more of a mental maturity and a little bit more of a leader of the team, where Frank, was driven by, he might have been driven by insecurity as well. He was always being.
What's interesting is that Gore's going to make the Hall of Fame and Craig won't. But most Niner fans, I think, would say that Craig was better. Now, maybe that's because Craig won multiple Super Bowls and Gore didn't. Maybe
Craig was also the offensive player of the year in the NFL in 1988. And what year was Frank Gore the best running back in the NFL?
He never was. He never was. Although
Roger probably wasn't either, but he did have 1 year where he was the offensive player of the year in the league, and he's the original 1,000. That's the other thing too. 1,000 yards rushing, 1,000 yards receiving. Marshall Faulk did it, and he did it after Roger did it, and he's in the Hall. To me, Roger belongs in the Hall. And Walsh, if he were alive, would have made it his personal goal to get Roger in the Hall. I still think Roger's going to get in, Grant, but it's not going to be anytime soon.
I just want to make one last distinction. Remember, Craig was on championship teams. Gore was on awful teams. And he was like one of the only bright spots. He didn't have a Bill Walsh making things easy on him. He was running into 8-man boxes routinely.
Yeah.
So he could have had a better career than his numbers say, even though he has great numbers. But
is that a Scott McCloughan pick?
I think so. Probably one of the best ones.
Tore both ACLs at Miami and then played 16 years in the NFL. I mean, just on longevity alone, Frank, the fact that he's top 3 is a testament to tremendous heart.
Absolutely. And if I recall correctly, like he was one of, back when I was a kid, all the best running backs in the South went to Miami. And he was like the best of the best. When he got recruited there, he was supposed to be the top guy, and he got hurt. And then it was Clinton Portis and Willis McGahee, and people kind of forgot about Gore. But then he proved in the NFL that he really was the best one of those guys all along. So he got vindication. I guess that's why he had that chip in his shoulder.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Great guy, though. I mean, and to me, I love the guys who live for the win. Give me 53 guys who show up to win and aren't worried about their contract and their this or their that. And that was Frank. He was all about winning.
Also, he's a throwback. How many players in this day and age are going to play into their mid-30s anymore? Like, honestly, you probably shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
You probably have enough money. The medical research is out on what football does to your brain. You probably should stop. But you know what? Frank Gore, he's built to play football. He loved it. He's a throwback. You got to love players like that.
Did Darren Williams knock him out, or did he knock out Darren Williams in that boxing?
Darren Williams knocked him out. Darren Williams knocked him out, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I thought Gore, he just seemed like he has a boxer's, I don't know, the way he maneuvered through the hole, he almost seemed like a Bob and Weaver, but he needs to protect that chin, Frank. Michael says there is no running back better at pass protection than Gore. If Harbaugh gave the rock to Gore in the Super Bowl at the end of that game, he is Super Bowl MVP. That's a good point. That's a good point.
Garrison Hurst was damn good as well, knocking people off. But Frank was a great blocker. But Roger was a better blocker. Let's be honest. Roger was a fullback. Roger made a Pro Bowl as a fullback and as a running back.
Last thing before we go, every year there are joint practices. And in the past, the writers used to do a little friendly wager, like who's going to be in the first fight?
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to be in the first fight? Because there's always fights with the joint practices, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people would usually, I'm not saying it was him, but a popular guess was Gore, because they would do those one-on-one blitz pickup drills. And Gore would destroy people in that drill. It was like,
oh, yeah.
I mean, usually that's sort of running back sort of kind of holding on for dear life and getting trucked. Gore would truck people. Gore would hurt people. And a lot of people thought, whatever, this team isn't ready for what Gore's going to do. That was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not saying
he would detonate on people. Oh. And Garrison Hurst, too, was a ridiculous. He'd stonewall you.
Yes.
But Frank Gore, I can remember so many times Frank, taking on a bigger bodied guy in the hole and just absolutely giving no quarter. I mean, like the rusher just hit. It was like the rusher hit a brick wall. That's how good of a blocker. That's what kind of functional strength Gore had as a blocker. It was crazy.
And that kind of offsets his lack. I mean, him not being Roger Craig as a receiver, because you want a check down option on 3rd and 4, but on 3rd and 8, that check down is not going to get you the first down. You need a running back who can stay in there and pick up a blitzer and give your quarterback some time.
I thought your best argument for Frank is that since he did play on bad teams, the way it is when you play on a bad team, you're circled, squared, X'd, highlighted.
For years.
You're on the Niners in the 80s. There's Taylor, there's Rice, there's all kinds of people that they want to stop. On those Niner teams with Gore, it was like, the D coordinator was on that chalkboard saying, "Stop Frank Gore." Yeah. That's goal number 1. And he still found a way to have success. So it was him against the world.
And at the end of the game, it was like the whole team had dogpiled him for 3 hours, and he would kind of come trudging up to the post game wherever. I mean, he just looked so exhausted after those games. Like he was a warrior who'd given everything. I miss those days. The Frank Gore days were fun.
Oh, I can remember seeing him in the locker room after the Super Bowl 37 or 47, I should say, in New Orleans, and he was just head in his hands, just distraught that they had lost that game to Baltimore.
I remember after wins, he'd have his kids around, and now I think one of his sons is like a running back at Southern Miss. I mean,
Derek Gore, maybe?
Yeah, it sounds about right. Anyway, thanks for watching, everyone. Make sure you subscribe to Larry on YouTube, Sports Larry Krueger. We'll be back same time, 3 o'clock Wednesday next week. Maybe Jimmy Garoppolo will be traded by then, but
don't bank on it.